Settle in now, let your body grow soft and still as the outside world gently fades behind you. Let the weight of your day drift like petals caught on a slow stream. Let your breath find its rhythm, slow and smooth, like wind brushing across a high mountaintop. You are safe here, and the night is long and kind. Tonight we journey to a quiet place, one both ancient and rarely remembered. Not quite heaven, not quite earth, but something in between. A place where stone dreams and wind listens, and one small spirit rises, looking for something it cannot yet name. This is not a tale of conquest or laughter, not yet. It is the story of a beginning wrapped in silence and longing. Before the Monkey King was crowned, before his name echoed through monasteries and murals, before his deeds were carved into memory, he was simply a being of stone and wonder, a creature born not of parents, but of the world itself, of sky, wind, and time. Sun Wukong, so often remembered for his defiance, his magic, his laughter in the face of gods, was once no more than a child of the mountain. But even then, something inside him reached out, not with fists, not with tricks, but with a deep, aching yearning to be seen, to be known, to matter in a world too vast and too silent. We begin tonight not with a bang or a cry, but with stillness, a stillness that lived before language, before light, before even form. And in that stillness, a mountain stood, and in that mountain, a stone waited, and inside that stone, a spark began to stir. So close your eyes. Let your breath soften like sand beneath slow waves. Let your mind grow spacious and wide, like a sky with no end. We are going somewhere far away now, but also somewhere very near, a place buried in myth, wrapped in quiet and humming softly with the very first questions of being. Let us return to the moment before everything changed. Let us sit beside the stone and listen. In the farthest corner of the world, where maps dared not reach and even time forgot to look, there rose a mountain. It was not the tallest, nor the most fearsome, but it was the oldest. The wind called it Hua Guo Shan, the mountain of flowers and fruit. But the mountain called itself nothing at all. It simply was. It had been there since before memory, since before form, since before the stars first blinked into being. Before there were names, before there were stories, there was only silence. But not an empty silence. It was a fullness that held everything in stillness, like the breath between the tides, like the hush before a bell is struck. It was not dark, nor light, not warm, nor cold. It simply rested, awaiting. The sky above the mountain was not yet the sky as we know it. It was a vast, pearly mist, stretching without shape or direction. The sun had not yet learned its path. The moon had no rhythm. Stars were scattered like seeds, not constellations. The world had no clock, no order, no memory. The elements slept. Fire dreamed of dancing, but had never danced. Water curled inside rock, imagining rivers it had not yet flowed through. And beneath this dreamlike stillness, in the heart of Hua Guo Shan, nestled between vines heavy with dew and trees whose roots reached deeper than legend, there sat a stone, broad, round, smooth to the wind's touch. It had no markings, no carvings, no inscriptions of fate. It looked like any other boulder, forgotten, perhaps by a crumbling mountain ridge or rolled into place by storms long since past. But this stone was different, for while all else slumbered, the stone watched, not with eyes, not with thought, but with a slow, patient presence. It soaked in moonlight, it drank the dreams of stars. Rain slipped across its surface, whispering of futures not yet born. Wind traced it gently, circling again and again, as if waiting for something to stir within. Time passed, though no one counted it. Seasons changed softly, flowers blooming and fading, leaves falling in sighs. The mountain shifted, breathing. Still, the stone did not move, it simply listened. And within it, something small began to flicker. A pulse, a glow, a thought without words. It was not life, not yet, but something close. At first, the stirrings were like echoes from a distant shore, barely there, barely formed, an awareness, like the moment between sleep and waking. And slowly, softly, the stone began to dream. It dreamed of light, of leaping, of sky, of laughter, of seeing and being seen. It dreamed of movement, of sound, of name. And the mountain, in its endless patience, wrapped itself around the stone's dreaming like a cradle. Then one day, though day and night still had no proper name, the stone cracked, not with violence, not with noise, but with a gentle, breath-like sound, as if a secret had finally been whispered back into the world. A fine seam opened down its center, glowing faintly with golden mist, and from it stepped a figure, neither god nor beast, neither spirit nor mortal, a creature of fur and firelight, a small monkey, but with eyes that held galaxies. He did not cry out, he did not tumble, he simply stepped into the world as if he had always belonged. The wind held its breath, the trees bent low, and for the first time the mountain felt the rhythm of a heartbeat that was not its own. The stone was now empty, but it did not grieve. It had not lost a secret, it had become one. The monkey blinked at the world around him. The colors were strange, the air was thick with silence. Everything shimmered slightly, as if the world itself were unsure whether to fully awaken. He reached out, not with fear, but with wonder. A butterfly landed on his finger and vanished. A droplet of dew rolled down his cheek and into the earth. He had no name, no guidance, no lineage, but he had something else, a spark. He did not know it yet, but this spark would make gods tremble. For now he walked through groves where peaches hung ripe and warm. He walked beside streams that sang lullabies to the moss. He walked over stones, still bearing the echoes of his origin. Birds watched him. Foxes paused mid-step. The forest grew quiet as he passed, not from fear, but from awe. For something new had entered the world, something unclaimed. He slept beneath trees, wrapped in roots like blankets. He chased light that flickered through the leaves. He watched the sky shift, wondering if it was changing because he had come, or if he had come because it was time for change. Sometimes he would sit on a rock, legs folded, watching the horizon as if waiting for someone to arrive. But no one ever did. And yet, he was not lonely. Not yet. The mountain was his companion, the wind his lullaby. But a question had begun to take shape inside him, a quiet, aching question. It did not have words, but it throbbed gently beneath every leaf he touched, every stone he turned. What am I? And still the world did not answer, but it listened, and it held him. He was not yet a king, not yet a sage, not yet the storm that would shake the heavens. He was only a thought made real, a soul born of stone and sky, and though he did not know it, his journey had already begun. The world was beginning to remember itself. With the stone monkey's first step into the world, something subtle but irreversible was set in motion. He had not only emerged from the stone, he had stirred the slumbering breath of nature itself. The mountain was no longer merely a quiet place of moss and mist. It had now become a stage, and the wind seemed to shift in anticipation of what would come next. All around him, energies that had long rested in silence began to rouse. The very soil hummed faintly under his feet. Trees, once content to stretch upward without meaning now, twisted their limbs toward the sky as if to watch him pass. Even the clouds drifted lower, heavy with observation and perhaps admiration. The monkey did not yet know what power was. He did not know that some creatures shape the world simply by walking through it, but the world knew, and it responded to him. It began with whispers. They came at twilight, curling beneath the eaves of the bamboo groves like threads of silver smoke. Not voices in the way you or I might hear them, but impressions like the rustling of leaves with intent, like a song without words lingering on the breeze. The spirits of the mountain were awakening. First came the lesser beings, old and curious, wind sprites that fluttered just at the edge of perception, invisible except in the way the branches swayed without cause. Water spirits that played beneath the stream's surface, shaping the flow into laughter when the monkey drank. Stone spirits who blinked slowly in their mossy stillness, never moving, yet always watching. They did not fear him, nor did they welcome him. He was not yet part of their world, but he was not apart from it either. He was something in between, and in that in-between space, he began to listen. Every day he climbed. He sat atop cliffs and stared into the sky as it shifted from gold to amethyst. He lay on warm stones and listened to the insects hum prophecies into the dusk. His mind was not filled with plans or ambitions, only questions, gentle ones, wondering ones. And in his wondering, something began to change. The wind answered him, gently, without words. It curled around him when he asked nothing at all. It carried petals toward him and scents of fruit he had not yet found. The water taught him reflection. The trees showed him how to wait, and the sky, endless and pale, held him always in its dome of soft forgetting. But it was not just the spirits of mountain and stream that stirred. The heavens too had noticed. Far above, where immortal palaces shimmered between stars and clouds, celestial eyes turned quietly toward Hua Guo Shan, not in fear, not in alarm, but in that mild, distracted curiosity of gods who have watched countless worlds rise and fall. Another being has awakened, they might have said, their voices as distant as thunder without storm. A monkey, another would reply, with a shrug of divine indifference. But the jade court, radiant and timeless, was not without its patterns. Every emergence stirred the threads of fate, and even the smallest knot in the tapestry had meaning. The weavers of time paused, ever so slightly, as if sensing that the new stitch forming on the lower edge of the world might one day reach the center. Back on the mountain, the monkey had begun to discover that he was not like the others. The forest creatures could not leap as he leapt, nor see as far, nor understand the gentle patterns in wind and water. He could grasp the branch before it moved. He could feel the fruit's ripeness before touching it. He could sit still for hours and feel the earth rotating beneath him. The spirits began to whisper his presence to one another, not with fear, but with quiet curiosity. And in their whispers, a name began to form. Not a true name, not yet, but a shape in sound, a syllable of recognition. He was not simply a monkey, he was the monkey, the one born of stone, the one who had no teacher, no family, no death. Still, the monkey did not understand this. He only felt a quiet pull, a yearning. Each morning he would wake and feel the mountain's heartbeat beneath him, and he would ask again, not aloud, but with his being, "What am I meant to do?" And though the mountain did not answer with words, it gave him signs. One day he climbed a new peak he had never dared to reach. The air was thin, the trees were sparse, but from there he could see beyond Hua Guoshan into distant lands shrouded in clouds and silence, and in the distance a single golden thread shimmered across the sky. A path, a river, a dream. He did not know, but he watched it until sleep pulled his eyes closed. That night he dreamed of beings he had never seen, great spirits of fire and cloud, giants with eyes like suns, dragons coiled around mountaintops whispering to the stars. He saw halls built of pearl and smoke and thrones carved from moonlight. He did not know their names, but he sensed something behind them, a pattern like ripples moving through all things. When he woke, the thread in the sky was gone, but the feeling remained. Something beyond this mountain was calling, and for the first time, the monkey began to laugh, not from joy, but from knowing. A soft, deep, amused laugh, as if the wind had finally told a joke only he understood. Still, he did not yet leave. Instead, he began to train. Not because he sought power, but because he sought belonging. He watched how the deer leapt, and he leapt higher. He watched how the fish swam, and he dove deeper. He climbed trees not to escape, but to understand. He danced with wind, played with rain, mimicked the movement of every being he met, not to dominate, but to mirror, to find himself in their forms. He did not realize that in doing so, he was already awakening something older and deeper than skill, the essence of transformation. The spirits watched. The wind sighed. The mountain began to hum. And far above, in the palace where immortals sipped peach nectar and ignored the lower realms, a single brush paused above a scroll. A name waited to be written, but not yet. First, the monkey would have to rise and fall and rise again. For now, he remained the child of stone, watching, listening, becoming. As the stone monkey moved through his mountain home, a quiet unfolding began, not only within him, but within the world itself. Though he did not yet know the word for magic, it followed him like a shadow, softly blooming in the places he touched, responding to the rhythm of his breath, the stillness of his thoughts, the curiosity that shaped his every movement. The world had always contained its own kind of order, a slumbering balance shaped by wind, water, stone, and root. But it was the kind of balance that does not yet recognize itself. When the monkey appeared, the threads began to tighten, forming patterns where before there had only been slow chaos. The spirits of the mountain, once content to drift unseen, began to arrange themselves, not by hierarchy or command, but by resonance, as if they too had been waiting for something or someone to step into the center and begin to hum the melody of becoming. This was not the birth of civilization. There were no villages, no language carved into bamboo slips, no emperors seated beneath silk canopies. It was something more subtle, the quiet awakening of meaning, the earliest architecture of myth and memory. One morning, long before the sun had risen beyond the ridgeline, the monkey awoke from a dream he could not explain. In it, he had walked through a forest where each leaf sang his name. The rivers bowed before him, and the clouds parted wherever he stepped. But the most curious part was what he held in his hand. A long, red gold staff, weightless yet immeasurably strong, which shrank and stretched with his thought alone. When he opened his eyes, his hands were empty, but the feeling of the dream remained, like heat lingering long after the fire has dimmed. He began to walk again, this time deeper than he had ever dared. The caves beneath the mountain called to him. They were not cold and foreboding, but warm and echoing, like the chambers of a great heart. Water dripped in time with his footsteps. Strange lights flickered without flame. The walls were veined with minerals that shimmered in silver and green, as if starlight had taken root in stone. At the cave's heart, he found a pool, still, round, perfect, the kind of stillness that feels like listening. When he leaned over it, his reflection stared back, not as a monkey, but as something larger, ancient and unknown, not frightening, just unfamiliar, as if the pool showed not who he was, but what he might become. He sat beside it for 3 days. He did not eat, he did not move. He simply breathed and watched, and with each breath, the pool changed. Patterns appeared in the ripples, swirling dragons, spiraling clouds, peach blossoms falling across an endless sky. a language not of words but of form. And slowly the monkey began to understand that he was not merely in the world, he was part of its weaving. The wind had begun to teach him its currents. The stones showed him where pressure became strength. The flames, when he dared to play with them, told him how to move without being seen. All of this knowledge was not taught through instruction, but through echo. He observed, mirrored, and then, almost instinctively, created. From these quiet reflections, early magic began to form, not spells as humans would later understand them, not rituals with chants or diagrams. It was older than that. This was the magic of being in tune, the kind that arises when one's spirit mirrors the rhythms of existence so closely that the world forgets to resist. He leapt from branch to branch without disturbing the leaves. He landed upon water without breaking its surface. He whispered to stones and heard them sigh in return. With time, he could shape wind with a gesture, coax flame with a glance, stretch shadow with a blink. And yet, he never saw himself as powerful. He saw himself as listening better. Magic was not control, it was recognition. In time, the mountain responded to him as if he were its chosen thread. Fruits ripened where he lingered. Springs bubbled where he stepped. The spirits began to gather around him, not with worship, but with quiet companionship. They brought him strange fruits, glowing moss, feathers from birds no longer seen. They taught him their songs, their silences, and in turn he gave them laughter, mischief, and stories whispered at twilight. But there was still something missing. Though he moved with grace and lived in harmony, a question still bloomed within him. Not what am I? He had long since made peace with that unanswerable riddle. No, now the question was different. Is there more? More than this mountain? More than this solitude? More than spirit and stone and echo? The dream of the red gold staff returned again and again. And now, in his waking moments, he began to look toward the sea beyond the mist, beyond Hua Guoshan, toward something vast, waiting, unknown. He climbed the highest peak once more, the very place where his feet had first stood as a newborn of stone. And from there, the sky opened to him again. This time, he did not see only clouds. He saw stars, and the stars blinked back. He felt their pull, not down, but upward. A current lifting not his body, but his spirit. A tide of unseen memory, as if the sky remembered something he had forgotten, or perhaps had never been told. He stood there until night gave way to dawn, and the peach blossoms floated in slow spirals around his feet. He had not yet left the mountain, but already the world beyond had begun to call him by name, and in that moment, in the hush between night and day, the stone monkey spoke, softly, not to anyone in particular. If I am not meant to remain here forever, he said, then may I carry the mountain with me wherever I go. It was not a wish, it was a promise, and the mountain, in its vast, patient silence, accepted. Far above, the stars began to align, the heavens stirred, the threads of fate began to glow. The world had been formed long ago, But now, with the birth of memory, the shaping of movement, and the weaving of meaning, time had begun. And somewhere in the quiet stillness between heaven and earth, a staff began to hum. But it was not yet time. The monkey would soon step into the story the world had written for him. But for now, he was still just a boy of stone, wrapped in wind, wandering softly at the edge of everything. By the time the world had begun to whisper his name, the monkey had already grown into something beyond his beginnings. Though he had emerged from stone, shaped not by womb, but by the convergence of wind, earth, and celestial breath, he was no longer just a creature of instinct or wonder. He had become aware of himself, his mind, his movements, the lingering question behind every act. He walked upright now, not always, but often. His hands, once curious only for grasping fruit and brushing water, now moved with intent. He mimicked what he saw in nature, forms of cranes standing in stillness, the twist of a snake through river reeds, the low stance of a stalking panther. From each, he gleaned a new way of being, a new shape of strength. His body became a library of movement, and his spirit began to stretch beyond the boundaries of the mountain. Though the spirits of Huaguoshan remained beside him, they were no longer his only companions. Slowly, other monkeys began to gather, not drawn by command, but by the magnetic gravity of one who seemed to live in rhythm with the mountain itself. They did not understand his birth or his dreaming eyes, but they followed him with the quiet loyalty of those who sense something divine even without knowing why. He did not name himself leader, but he became one. When danger came in the form of leopards or serpents, he was the one who intervened. Not always with violence. Often he tricked the threat into departure, outwitting it with clever mimicry or illusion. Sometimes he simply stood his ground, radiating such calm authority that the predator paused and turned away. And yet, despite this new community, a part of him remained separate. They did not speak as he did. They did not wonder. They did not dream of stars or golden staffs. They did not wake in the middle of the night to sit atop rocks and gaze out over the sea, asking questions the wind refused to answer. Still, he loved them. He taught the younger ones to leap, to climb, to recognize the different calls of the birds. He shared fruit, laughter, silence, but he was not one of them, not truly. The spirits had long ceased to warn him. Now they greeted him with subtle gestures, a flame that flickered 3 times instead of 2, a pebble placed in his path like a wordless riddle. The world was speaking to him in symbols, and he was beginning to understand the language. It was then, during the season of golden rain, when blossoms fell in waves and the sky warmed into a kind of dream, that the monkey felt the pull again. Not outward this time, not towards stars or palaces in clouds, but inward, deep into himself, as if something buried beneath the layers of fur and laughter and questions had awakened. He climbed the mountain again, not the cliffs where he had trained, nor the groves where he had played, but higher still, into a place untouched even by spirits, a ridge crowned with silence, where the wind changed direction without reason, and the stones pulsed faintly beneath the moss. There he sat and waited. He fasted for 7 days. The animals did not follow. The wind did not speak. He was alone. And then, at dawn on the 8th day, a voice spoke from within him. It was not in words. It was a soundless resonance, a knowing, a flame. It told him nothing of destiny, nothing of prophecy. It did not promise power or fame. It simply said, "You are not made to follow." And with that, something shifted, a ripple through his soul, a deep exhale that had waited 1,000 years. When he rose, he did not feel larger. He felt clearer, as if the fog around his essence had thinned. He did not descend right away. He spent 3 more days in silence, watching birds cross the sky, watching clouds form, shift, and vanish, watching his own hands and wondering how they had become so steady. And when he returned to his kin, they did not ask what had changed, but they watched him differently, a little slower, a little softer. He smiled, and they smiled back. But that night, he stood alone once more, looking at his reflection in the stream. "I must go," he whispered, not out of urgency, but with the quiet weight of truth. There is more. No one tried to stop him. Perhaps they sensed it too. So the monkey began his journey, not into the mortal world, not yet, but into discipline. He would seek out the great masters, the immortal sages who lived in forests so ancient they no longer remembered names. He would cross rivers where time flowed backward and mountains where shadows walked without bodies. He would kneel before teachers who asked not for obedience but for silence. He would study forms of movement so subtle they changed the air itself. He would learn how to shape cloud, how to ride wind, how to fold his body into mist and flame. He would listen to the sound of a peach falling and hear the secrets of gravity. And eventually, when no teacher could teach him more, he would look into the sky again. He would remember the golden thread in his dream, and he would rise toward it. But he was still the same child of stone, still the same spark, still the same soul who had once looked at the stars and asked, "What am I?" Only now he had another question: what can I become? And the stars, gentle and eternal, waited patiently to answer. The path beyond Hua Guoshan was not one of conquest, but of seeking. When the stone monkey left the mist-veiled cradle of his birthplace, he did not march forth as a warrior. He moved as a pilgrim does, curious, listening, watching for signs not in grand declarations, but in the rustle of grass, the shift of clouds, the way the earth leaned when he stepped. He did not yet understand that he was walking the road that all spirits walk, the road from instinct to identity, from wonder to will. Each place he passed through taught him something, though no voice ever claimed to be his guide. The world itself became his teacher. He crossed valleys where the trees whispered in forgotten dialects, their branches bent like old hands holding secrets too long. He slept in caves where dream fragments lingered in the air like mist, remnants of ancient beings who had once meditated there and left behind their stillness. He drank from streams so clear that they reflected not only the sky above, but the thoughts that moved beneath the surface of the self. And always the same feeling tugged gently at the edge of his spirit. More, more than climbing, more than mimicking, more than harmony. Something deeper, a kind of knowledge he could sense but not yet grasp. A door he felt beneath his feet, but had not yet found the way to open. At last, in a forest so thick the light arrived only as a green hush, he met his first true teacher. Not a god, not a beast, a sage. The kind the world forgets, because they do not seek followers. They do not build temples or command storms. They simply are, rooted as deeply in their silence as the trees are in the mountain's skin. This sage looked at him not with surprise but recognition, as if he had been expecting the monkey, though he had never sent for him. "You have come far," the sage said, his voice like water passing over stone. The monkey bowed, not from tradition, but from instinct. The silence around them held its breath. "I want to learn," he said, and the sage nodded once before walking deeper into the trees, never once looking back. The training did not begin with technique. It began with undoing. The monkey was asked to sit still for 3 days and count the leaves falling from a single tree. He was told to listen to the sound of bamboo creaking and name what emotion each sound held. He was told to trace the wind's path by watching how it moved the fur on his own arms. The monkey obeyed, not blindly but with growing fascination. For the first time, someone was showing him that the world did not simply respond to him, it spoke through him. That the self was not a container, but a mirror. That power did not lie in force or speed, but in alignment. Only after many months was he shown the first true skill, the art of riding clouds. It was not as he had imagined. No spell, no chant, no leap of faith. Instead, he was taught to feel the desire of the cloud, to become so still inside himself that the cloud no longer recognized him as separate. It took time, many failures. He would leap and fall, rise and wobble, drift and descend. But eventually he learned to float, not with struggle, but with ease. Effortless effort, the sage called it, to become part of the thing you wish to command. The monkey began to change, not just in body, though his leaps became smoother, his reflexes sharper, but in spirit. He laughed less often, but when he did, it came from deeper within. He moved with a softness that made the wind lean closer. He no longer chased movement for its own sake, but let it arise as needed. He became, without knowing it, a force among forces. But there was one lesson he could not grasp. The sage called it empty presence. "Be here," the sage would say, "but without self." And the monkey would try. But always something inside him resisted, a spark that did not wish to vanish, a voice that said, "I am, I exist, I matter." It was not pride, not yet. It was the memory of stone, of being born not from others, but from absence. That memory clung to him, a quiet echo of isolation. The sage did not scold him. He only said, "That too is a part of your path. One day it will bring you pain and power." And so it did. Eventually, the time came when the sage said no more. "You have learned all I can teach," he said as they sat beneath a tree whose blossoms never fell. Your strength is not of this world. Your curiosity is your greatest gift, and your unrest will shape the skies. The monkey bowed again, though this time there was sadness behind his eyes. He had grown to love the quiet, but the thread inside him was pulling again. This time, not towards sages or mountains, but upward, into heaven, into the courts of immortals, into the halls of jade and pearl, where destiny was woven and names were written in starlight. And so, with nothing but the wind at his back, he rose, riding cloud, crossing sky, laughing softly to himself, not in mischief, but in awe. He was going to the place where names meant everything, and he was going to write his own. When the monkey crossed the threshold between earth and sky, he did not do so with thunder or roar. He rose lightly, cloud underfoot, as if he were not breaking the boundary between mortal and divine, but slipping through a curtain already worn thin by dreaming. The air grew cooler, brighter. The light changed, not harsher, but more precise, as though even the sun itself were more aware in the celestial realm. Heaven in those days was a quiet place. The gods and immortals lived not in constant revelry, but in balance. Everything had its order. Every being had its name, its function, its place in the lattice of eternity. The monkey arrived like a stray gust of wind, playful, strange, and inexplicably free. At first they laughed, not cruelly, but with the indulgence of those who believe themselves above disturbance. What could a monkey born of stone, a creature of forests and mist, possibly seek in a place built from stars and jade? But the monkey did not come to ask permission. He came to belong. He bowed as he had learned to do. He offered no threats. He simply said, "I have climbed far. I have learned much. I am strong. I am swift. I am awake. Let me serve." It was a simple request, one rooted not in pride but in yearning. The Jade Emperor, timeless and unflinching, considered. He saw no harm in granting the monkey a post, something small, ceremonial, invisible, a title with no weight, no glory. Keeper of the heavenly horses. It was not mockery, it was dismissal. But the monkey accepted it with a smile. He tended the celestial stables with reverence. He whispered to the horses, learned their names. He brushed their manes beneath constellations. He listened when they dreamed. And slowly, heaven began to shift, just a little. The horses ran more freely. The stars above the stable shone a little warmer. But the other immortals did not see it. They saw only a monkey where a minister should be. When he learned that his title was hollow, that his role was given only to quiet his ambitions, something inside him began to tremble, not with rage, with grief, the same grief that had stirred when the wind did not answer his earliest questions. The ache of being placed outside the circle again. He did not rage against it immediately. Instead, he climbed higher still. He walked the halls of heaven. He memorized the flow of rivers made of silver light. He sat beside the tower of fate, watching the threads of mortals twist and shimmer. He learned, quietly, hungrily, and then, one day, he returned. But not as a stable hand. He returned as Taithien Daitan, great sage, equal to heaven. He declared it himself. No scroll was signed, no council approved it. He took the title, wore it like dawn, and walked through heaven with his head high. And for the first time, the immortals paused. There was something about the way he spoke his name, not arrogance, but certainty. He had found his own place in the tapestry and woven it without permission. Some laughed, some were furious, some were afraid, but none could unsee him now. He was not violent, not yet. He simply refused to be invisible, and the heavens were shaken. The stories that followed would become louder, more dramatic. His rebellion, his defiance, the battles that cracked mountains and rattled the stars. But beneath the thunder of those tales lies a quieter truth, one rarely spoken. The monkey did not rise out of hunger for power. He rose because he could no longer bear to be forgotten. He had trained, he had bowed, he had served, and still the heavens placed him at the edge, unnamed, unseen. So he named himself. So he stood in the center. So he became the echo that would not fade. In time, his actions would lead to punishment, to the weight of 5 mountains pressed against his back, to centuries of silence beneath stone, to the slow erosion of his pride into something softer, wiser. But even then, even beneath the crushing solitude, he was not lost. He was remembering the child who had emerged from stone and listened to water, who learned the sky by mimicking birds, who counted falling leaves for a master who asked for stillness, who saw the stars and whispered, "What can I become?" And so, even after the battles, even after the anger, even after the world labeled him trickster and rebel and fool, beneath it all was still the question. And the wind, at last, began to whisper back, "You are the thread that reminds the world it can move. You are the echo that tells silence it is not alone. You are the stone that dreamed of flight and learned how to fall with grace." The monkey's legacy was not in his defiance, it was in his becoming. And in that becoming, he became something no title could name, not just a king, not just a sage, but a reminder that all beings, born of womb or wind, of stone or star, are searching for the same thing, to be known, to be named, to belong. In every legend that echoes down the corridors of time, there are artifacts, objects woven so tightly into myth that they become inseparable from the beings who wield them. Some shimmer with light, others with shadow. Some speak in riddles, some are silent yet watching. In the stories of Sun Wukong, there is one such relic, one mystery so deeply entangled with his essence that it ceases to be merely a tool and becomes an extension of his soul. It is called the Rúyì Jīn Gū Bàng, the compliant golden-hooped staff. To say that it is a weapon is to miss the truth entirely. Yes, it has struck gods and demons. Yes, it has leveled mountains and shattered illusions. But it is not fear that surrounds the staff, it is mystery. For while many beings wield power, few ever wield power that responds to their breath, that shrinks and stretches like a living thought, that sleeps inside an ear and awakens as a storm. Where did it come from? How did it come to be in the Monkey King's hands? The stories differ. Some say it was forged in the depths of the sea, buried in the palace of the Dragon King himself. Others whisper that it is not a staff at all, but a fragment of the axis of the world, the pillar that once held heaven and earth apart, now fallen, forgotten, waiting to be found. Whatever its origin, all agree on one thing: the staff chose him. The moment the monkey laid eyes upon it, something clicked into place, not like a sword in a sheath, but like a heartbeat in its chest. He did not fight to lift it. He did not struggle to master it. It came to his hand as if returning home. It was vast, at rest, a great iron pillar inscribed with golden letters. But at his will, it shrank until it vanished behind his ear like a sliver of shadow. He carried it always, not for war, not for pride, but because he could not be without it, like a memory, like a dream that refused to fade. When he spun it, the wind danced. When he slammed it, mountains bowed. But more curious than its might was its silence. It never glowed, never sang, never spoke, and yet it felt alive. The staff obeyed him, not like a tool obeys a hand, but like a companion responds to intent. It knew what he meant, even when he did not yet know himself. It mirrored his moods. When he was playful, it sparkled. When he was defiant, it pulsed. When he was quiet, it simply waited. The sages who watched him from afar began to wonder, was it a gift from the gods or something older, deeper, drawn to him not by fate but by recognition? Could it be that the staff was not forged for war, but for remembrance? And if so, what was it remembering? There are tales, ancient, faded, spoken only by the winds over the oldest peaks, that the staff once held the boundary between chaos and form. That before the world had shape, a line was drawn through the formless dark, and that line became the first division. This is above, this is below, this is light, and this is shadow. That line, that division, was not just concept, it was substance. And in time, that substance took shape. And in time, that shape was forgotten. Until a monkey, born of stone, wandered into the sea and found a rusted pole humming like thunder in a bottle. What if the staff had not waited to be found? What if it had called, and the only being in all the worlds who could hear that call was one born not from lineage, but from silence? No one knows, perhaps not even Sun Wukong himself. But in quiet moments when he held the staff loosely in his hands and gazed out across the clouds, there was a stillness between them, a shared silence, not of control, but of kinship. And those who saw them then, who looked upon the monkey and the staff as the sun dipped low into peach-colored clouds, would sometimes forget which one moved and which one was being held. For they were no longer separate. They were together, a memory of something older than words. To those who dwell in the comfort of written history, the Rúyì Jīn Gū Bàng is a fixed point, a known object, a defined relic. It is listed in scrolls, illustrated in paintings, praised in stories of rebellion and redemption. But to the sages, mystics, and those who dream in the folds of myth, the staff is far from simple. It is a riddle, a paradox, a thing with many names and even more meanings. Some call it the weight of the world, a remnant of the pole that once stabilized the heavens when they first began to spin. In this telling, the staff is not a gift, but a leftover, something so old and so burdened by forgotten responsibilities that only a creature outside the system could wield it without crumbling. To lift it is not a feat of strength, It is a declaration of willingness to carry balance itself. Others claim it is the ink stick of the sky, an object used not to fight, but to write. Long before mortal calligraphers dipped brushes into pools of black lacquer, the heavens themselves were said to be inscribed using tools of divine resonance. Not brushes, but rods of compressed night and gold, used to trace the patterns of time, to carve the invisible paths of stars. The staff in this version once wrote the lines of fate until it fell, or was hidden, or was abandoned. And still others whisper a stranger tale, that the staff is not an object at all, but a condensed thought, a wish so ancient, so vast, that it took shape in the realm between realms. Not a wish of a god, nor a mortal, but of the world itself, a desire to be known, to have shape, to be held. If this is true, then the staff's true form is not iron, nor gold, nor magic. It is recognition made manifest. These interpretations may seem contradictory, yet each one speaks to a different facet of the Monkey King's own journey. To say the staff is the weight of the world is to acknowledge the burden he carried, not only in power, but in expectation. To rise from stone, to reach heaven, to demand a name where none was offered, this is not light work. The staff becomes the physical echo of his burden. To call it the ink stick of the sky is to point toward his role as a boundary breaker, not a destroyer, but a rewriter. Sun Wukong did not only defy the Jade Emperor, he rewrote his place in the cosmic script. What if the staff did not simply obey him, but allowed him to trace new stories into being? And if it is indeed a condensed wish, then perhaps both the staff and the monkey are not so different. Both born of longing, both shaped by isolation, both drawn toward the need to be seen, to be held. Among the scholars of the celestial courts, there was once debate. Did the monkey earn the staff by virtue of his power and cunning, or did the staff choose him because it knew that only someone who understood loneliness could wield it without corruption? The Dragon Kings, whose kingdom lay beneath the sea, tell yet another version. They say the staff was once a measuring rod, a divine instrument used to calculate the shifting tides between the mortal world and the stars. It lay forgotten in the ocean treasury, too heavy to be moved, too old to be destroyed. None dared touch it, not even dragons, until the monkey arrived. He walked into the ocean not as a conqueror, but as a seeker. When he found the pillar, he did not struggle to lift it. He simply asked it to come with him, and it did. It shrank into his hand, curled into his palm like a sleeping bird, and from that moment on, it answered to no one else. This telling suggests something rarely discussed in tales of strength, that gentleness can command power in a way force never could, that the staff responded not to might, but to recognition. There is another story, quiet, rarely told. It says the staff once belonged to another, a silent warrior lost in time, who wielded it to hold back the fall of heaven during a war the stars no longer remember. When that warrior passed, the staff drifted through dimensions, seeking someone whose heart echoed its own. It passed through many hands. Each tried to use it. None could. Until a monkey, born of stone and longing, touched it not with ambition, but with wonder. This version, though quiet, is perhaps the most intimate, for it suggests that the staff was not a tool waiting for an owner, but a companion waiting to be understood. It is also the most sorrowful, because if true, it means the staff remembers more than it shows. It has carried loss, it has held silence, it has waited longer than the mountains, and it chose not a god, not a warrior, not a sage, but a monkey with fire in his spirit and emptiness in his chest. So many meanings, so many truths, and in each of them a reflection of Sun Wukong himself. He is the bearer of great weight, and the one who leaps freely. He is the trickster who writes his own fate, and the seeker who longs to be written into the world. He is chaos and symmetry, laughter and solitude. The staff does not define him, but it reveals him, as all true companions do. The story of the Rúyì Jīn Gū Bàng, like all ancient things, refuses to be fully known. It slips away just when one thinks it has been understood, leaving behind not conclusions, but impressions, like footprints in fog, or reflections in a stream disturbed by wind. Its origin remains uncertain. Its meaning changes shape depending on who is looking. And yet, in this lack of clarity lies its deepest truth. Some mysteries are not puzzles to be solved, but mirrors to be held. Perhaps that is why the staff and the monkey are bound so intimately, not only by myth, but by nature. For Sun Wukong himself is not a character of absolutes. He is not wholly hero, nor villain, sage, nor beast. He is the restless center of his own legend, the one who never settles into a final form. And so too is the staff. It changes size, weight, and presence. It disappears and reappears. It responds, but never announces itself. It adapts, just as he does. But why does this matter? Why should the story of a shifting staff, a golden rod that answers to no master but the Monkey King, matter in a world that longs for answers, borders, categories? Perhaps because, quietly, it reminds us that some parts of ourselves are not meant to be explained. We each carry a mystery, a weight that shifts, a silence that follows us through our lives, waiting to be noticed, not with fear, but with reverence. The staff is that silence, externalized, a companion that reflects not what the world sees in us, but what we carry deep within, often unspoken, often misunderstood. When the monkey tucks the staff behind his ear and walks with it unseen, it is not to conceal power. It is to remember that power is not always meant to be on display. Sometimes the truest strength lies in restraint, in knowing when not to strike, in knowing when to listen. And when he calls it forth, suddenly, gracefully, without hesitation, it is not to prove something, but because something within him knows. The staff responds not to his pride, but to his presence. It emerges when the world forgets what he is, when he too begins to forget. That is the deeper mystery, not what the staff is, but what it reminds him to be. There are stories within stories. One tale tells of a time when the monkey, long after the pilgrimage, long after the throne of heaven forgave him, stood beside a quiet river. He held the staff in his hand, but did not move. He stared at its surface, weathered but gleaming, and whispered, "Do you remember the stone?" And though the staff made no sound, it shimmered just once, faintly, and he smiled, not because he had remembered something new, but because he had remembered himself. This is the staff's greatest gift, not destruction, not magic, not victory, but memory. It remembers what the monkey was when no one else did. It remembers the question he asked the sky when no one was listening. It remembers the child of stone who looked at the stars and asked, not for power, but for place. It is no wonder, then, that it has no true name, no origin story that settles, no clear function. It is the kind of mystery that walks with you, not behind, not ahead, but beside, whispering, "You are more than what the world has called you." And perhaps that is why the gods never truly understood it. They mistook it for a weapon. They mistook the monkey for a storm. But both the staff and its bearer are quieter than history allows. Both hold the ache of being unwritten, and in that ache they found each other. If the staff is truly alive, then it lives in the space between certainty and seeking, just like him, just like all of us. It lives in the question that echoes through the mountains, through the heavens, through the hollow places we do not often visit in our own hearts. What am I, really? And the answer is not spoken. It is held by a hand, by a breath, by a rod that once measured the tides of heaven, and now rests gently behind the ear of a monkey who refused to be forgotten. The legend most often told, the one etched into scrolls and whispered in lantern-lit tea houses, follows a familiar rhythm. The Monkey King, Sun Wukong, born from stone atop the mountain of flowers and fruit, becomes a powerful and mischievous force who dares to defy the celestial order, a being who learns the secrets of immortality, who trains under a Taoist sage, who masters 72 transformations and cloud somersault flight. It is said he traveled to the Dragon King's underwater palace and demanded a weapon worthy of his strength, selecting the Rúyì Jīn Gū Bàng, the weight-shifting golden staff that would become his companion and symbol. They say he strode through heaven itself, claiming the title Great Sage equal to heaven, though it had not been offered. They say he mocked the celestial bureaucracy, crashed divine banquets, and devoured peaches of immortality meant only for the elite. He fought armies of gods. He rebelled against the stars. He refused to kneel before the throne of the Jade Emperor. In these tales, he is unruly, cunning, irreverent, more force of nature than person, a trickster, a rebel, a monkey who would not be told no. Eventually, the legend tells us, the Buddha himself intervened. With calm smile and cosmic patience, he challenged Sun Wukong to leap from the palm of his hand. The monkey, ever confident, soared across the sky in a single somersault, reaching what he thought was the very edge of the world. But when he planted his flag and laughed, the Buddha showed him the truth. He had never left the Buddha's palm. And so, the monkey was imprisoned beneath a sacred mountain, Wu Shan, the Five Elements Mountain, where he remained for 500 years, trapped beneath its immense weight, his spirit worn to stillness. He was eventually freed by the monk Tang Sanzang, better known in the West as Tripitaka. As part of a divine mandate, the monkey was to become one of the monk's protectors on a perilous journey to retrieve sacred scriptures from the West. And so the chaos became a companion. The wildness found a path. Alongside a talking pig, a river demon, and a dragon horse, he traveled across vast lands, facing trials and demons, not through mischief alone, but with growing wisdom, restraint, and compassion. Through hardship, he changed. Through service, he remembered. By the end of the pilgrimage, Sun Wukong was no longer just a rebellious monkey. He was a Buddha in his own right, the victorious fighting Buddha. Enlightened not through stillness but through fire. This, then, is the version most often told, the story of transformation, of a wild spirit shaped into harmony, of pride humbled and chaos guided, a story of redemption, a journey from defiance to divinity, and it is, in its own way, beautiful. But legends, like clouds, shift when the wind of perspective changes. And if you listen, not to the loud tellings, but to the quiet places, if you sit by forgotten streams or among temple ruins where the stone lions have no eyes left, you might hear another version of the tale. One not written in triumph or punishment, but in longing. This version does not begin with mischief or magic or even rebellion. It begins with a question, not how powerful was the Monkey King, but rather, what if he was never angry, only alone? In this softer, dimmer thread of the story, the monkey does not rise out of pride. He rises out of absence, a stone child who looked at the sky and saw no place for himself, who watched the immortals float by on clouds spun of silk and incense, and asked, not with arrogance, but with aching, why not me? In this telling, the laughter is quieter. It comes not from confidence, but from a clever spirit learning to survive in a world that did not expect him to arrive, let alone belong. He is still powerful, yes, but not because he wants to rule, because he wants to matter. He mimics the gods not to mock them, but to understand them. He copies their rituals, their words, their motions, not to ridicule, but to enter the pattern from which he was excluded. When he declares himself great sage equal to heaven, it is not to boast. It is to insist that he has a place, that he is real, that he can exist alongside the names already written in golden ink on celestial scrolls. And when the Jade Emperor sends him to the stables, it wounds him deeply. Not because the task is beneath him, but because it is done in pretense, a mask of welcome to cover the sting of rejection. A seat at the table, but at the very end, where the silverware doesn't match and no one pours your tea. In this version, the rebellion is not rage, it is grief. The monkey upends the celestial order not to destroy it, but to reveal that it was never made for him, that the heavens, in all their order and glory, never imagined someone like him might knock at their gates, let alone enter. His thefts, the peaches, the elixirs, become less acts of defiance and more desperate attempts to take what was never offered. A child stealing light because the window was always closed. And the Buddha in this version does not trap him with trickery. The Buddha simply shows him the limits of ego and perhaps the sorrow of clinging to a story that no longer fits. Not as punishment, but as pause. A long, quiet breath in the life of a soul that has never rested. The mountain becomes not a prison, but a womb. A place to be held, finally, without needing to prove or perform. And when the monk Tang San Zang comes, not as savior, but as mirror, the monkey does not leap into service from debt, but from quiet recognition. This man too walks the world with a burden no one sees. This man too was chosen for reasons he does not fully understand. The pilgrimage then becomes not a sentence, but a conversation. A way for the monkey to try, perhaps for the first time, to belong not in heaven, but among the flawed and wandering. He learns not from sermons, but from silence, from walking beside others, from seeing his reflection in their struggles. In this telling, the victory is not becoming a Buddha, it is becoming known, not worshipped, not feared, simply understood. And the staff, the golden rod of shifting size and sleeping presence, it is not a weapon, not truly. It is a memory, a piece of the world that once held him when nothing else would. The story this way becomes gentler, the sharp edges worn smooth by time and breath, not erased, just softened, because sometimes even legends need rest, and even gods need to be seen as something other than divine. In this quiet path, the Monkey King is not a rebel, not a clown, not a hero. He is simply a being who tried to sit at the table of heaven and finally found home beside those walking slowly, one dusty step at a time toward peace. Legends are not stone, they are wind and river. They do not stand still, they move slowly or swiftly, reshaping themselves across time, across mouths, across hearts. And so it is with the story of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, the great sage equal to heaven. He has worn many faces, played many roles. In one version, he is wildness, in another wisdom, in one he is punished, in another he is purified, and still the truth remains more delicate than any one telling. Stories evolve because we do. We carry them not as fixed monuments, but as lanterns. The light they cast changes depending on how we hold them. For centuries, monks recited his tale as a lesson in pride and restraint. Later poets sang of his cunning and courage, his laughter as a shield against tyranny. And now some whisper a softer vision, a story not of rebellion, but of recognition, of the desire not to rise above, but simply to be seen. Each version tells us something about the teller. In eras of order and empire, he becomes the fool, the one who must be tamed. In times of turmoil, he becomes the rebel, the one who cannot be silenced. And in quiet moments, when the world grows still enough to feel the ache beneath our noise, he becomes the wanderer, the one who wants to know where he belongs. None are wrong, but none are whole. And perhaps that is his gift. Sun Wukong does not offer us clarity, he offers us reflection. He is the spirit of resistance when resistance is needed. He is the mirror of arrogance when ego swells. He is the voice of wonder in a world too rigid to dream. He is the hand reaching toward the divine, not to take its throne, but to ask, "Do you see me?" What remains always is the spark that woke within the stone, the spark that danced with the wind and mimicked the birds, the spark that bowed to a master and then leapt beyond him, the spark that laughed in the face of hierarchy, not from cruelty, but from a kind of holy confusion. Why should heaven be closed to those born from earth? That spark lives on. It lives not only in temples and stage plays, in novels and scrolls, but in the restless corners of ourselves, in the part of us that does not want to be tamed, but does want to be loved, in the part of us that asks softly, "If I do not fit the pattern, does that mean I do not belong?" Sun Wukong answers with a grin, a spin of his staff, and a leap through the sky. He does not say yes or no. He simply refuses to disappear. Even after enlightenment, even after the title, even after the stories say he was tamed, perfected, made serene, he remains alive. Not because he defied the gods, but because he stayed true to his motion. Motion not as chaos, but as becoming. And that, perhaps, is the quiet truth that endures beneath all versions. That the Monkey King is not here to be worshipped, feared, or even fully understood. He is here to remind us that the journey never ends. That identity is not a destination. It is a dance between forgetting and remembering, between seeking and resting, between stone and sky. So if someday you find yourself walking alone in the early morning light, before the city stirs, before your name feels heavy, and you hear a whisper in the wind that does not come from any direction, it might just be him, not asking for your attention, but offering a presence beside you, a story to walk with, a mystery to carry, and a soft voice, half laughter, half echo, reminding you that you too are allowed to become. Now, dear listener, the story begins to fade, like clouds thinning as dawn approaches, like a soft dream slipping into the folds of memory. We have wandered far tonight, through stone and silence, rebellion and reflection. We have sat with the Monkey King, not as a figure of legend carved into golden halls, but as a presence, a spirit, a question. We have watched him be born, not in the chaos of fire, but in the hush of mountain moss, in the glimmer of dew on a boulder older than words. We've listened to him learn, not through sermons or scrolls, but through leaves falling and rivers speaking their clear, round truths. We've seen him rise, not for power, but for place, not to dominate, but to exist among the stars that once looked down without knowing his name, And we've seen that his greatest battles may not have been with armies or gods, but with silence, the silence that greets the outsider, the silence of being left unwritten, the silence that asks, if no one sees me, do I still exist? In this long night together, you've also walked through mystery, the golden hooped staff, that quiet, patient companion, not a weapon, not truly, but a thread between who he was, who he is, and who he dares to be. You've seen that the staff is not about power, but memory, the kind that stays behind the ear when everything else changes. And you've heard too the softer telling, the version often left in shadow, where rebellion is not rage but yearning, where the storm is not punishment but motion, where even the Buddha does not scold but simply shows that the edge of the sky is only as far as your own becoming. Now, as your breath grows slower and heavier, as the shapes in your mind begin to blur into that tender velvet of sleep, let the story sink in like rain returning to earth. Let it remind you that identity is not fixed, that every moment is another step in your pilgrimage, that even the loudest figures in myth were once small, curious beings, asking in their own way to be part of something. Let the monkey's journey be a quiet lantern for your own, not as instruction, not as doctrine, but as presence, the presence of change, the presence of imperfection, the presence of a soul that laughs and leaps and listens to the wind, even when the wind has no words. And in this moment, you don't need to understand every piece of the story. You don't need to remember every name. Let the details drift away like blossoms on still water. Let go of needing to reach the ending, because the story, like the monkey, never really ends. It continues in silence, in breath, in sleep. So rest now under the mountain sky. Let the clouds pass above you like slow drifting thoughts. Let the stars blink gently like eyes closing. You are not outside the story, you are part of it, a quiet part, a sacred part. And just as the Monkey King once lay still beneath the 5 elements, not to be punished, but to be held, you too are being held now, held in night, held in dream, held in the soft memory of myth where nothing is lost and everything becomes.
Oh